So we're going to go to the musician's resume and CV and sort of cover it once here, because a lot of the same things apply of what you're going to be adding in. It's similar to what we just went over. So what you're going to be adding to those green puzzle pieces is potentially your instrument or voice type. That is going to be within your name and contact info. And I'll show you an example here in a minute. Your performance experience and or your compositions and arrangements and or your recordings and broadcasts are or could be your bread and butter section. So depending on what you do, those are going to be ones that you want up top. Your tours, if you've got them, competitions, skills, competencies, language proficiencies, especially if you're a vocalist, and then other possibilities that you might include either on a longer CV or specific resumes as needed. So for instance, if you are submitting a resume for a teaching opportunity, then obviously teaching experience would still be on your resume. But you might include a lot of these if you have a longer length to work with for something like a CV. So teaching experience, professional affiliations and service, again, lectures and presentations, again, publications, community service, volunteer work, all these things are possibilities that you might add. So we'll go a little bit more into performance experience here. A lot of these are things that we've already covered, but let's get a little into it. So subcategories that you might divide this into. So similarly, like when we were talking about exhibitions, you could divide those up in several ways. Here we could divide performance experience up into like orchestral experience, solos with orchestras, chamber music, recitals, solo concert work. You could divide it by styles. So like jazz rock styles versus classical performance, clubs, jazz festivals, musical theater performance experience, choral experience, etc. So however your career looks is going to change how these subcategories might function on your resume, if they do at all. So depending on what you do too, you might need to list specific performances. So if you were Donna Elvira and Don Giovanni, for instance, or if you were just the principal cello for a couple of years for the University of Illinois Symphony Orchestra, you would list it like that. So depending on what you do is dependent on what information you include. And the like Donna Elvira, Don Giovanni example is going to align, like if you are in operas, oratorio, etc., with what we talk about with the actors' resumes as well. So the way you format and everything we'll cover there. You might need to abbreviate it on a resume, especially if you're trying to fit it onto one page for a certain purpose to selected performances. You might not be able to fit it all in. Or if you have a teaching focused CV, a lot of times people are like, how much of my performance stuff do I include when I'm going for a teaching role or a role in an academic setting or something like that? You still do want to include it, because when someone's hiring a teacher, someone's hiring a instructor for a college course, they want to know that you're also an artist and what experience you have in your artistic realm and what level of expertise you have. But you're not going to spend as much room on that as if you were going for a performance role. So you will want to abbreviate that section to selected and move it down in your CV or resume so that you can have your teaching experience first. All right, compositions, arrangements, you might split up into categories as well, if you have a lot. And so this is what it might look like all together. Again, unicorn here, but let's say you have your name, contact information, instrument, voice type, professional affiliation, if you've got one, education and professional affiliation should be orange, education and training, and then your performance experience, composition arrangements, recording and broadcast, tours, competitions, honors, awards, grants, and references. So this is a good order, not necessarily your order again. So here is a real life singer's resume, one-page resume again. So you can see the formatting. We're going to talk a little bit about this in the acting section, but oh, we're running out of time, aren't we? Getting close. But you can see it's in 3 columns. That's typical for actors. You've got name, instrument, voice types right under the name, contact information, performance experience is divided here into opera theater, musical theater, recording and television, and then honors, awards, and grants, and education is down at the bottom here because it is relevant to what he does. A CV, here you can see the teaching experience. I'm going to cut out all these builds, but the teaching experience here is listed first. This is presumably for a teaching appointment, so that comes first. And then all the education is kind of divided up, references at the end. Performance experience comes not until the third page. So that tells you something, right? So it's still there, but it's not nearly. Okay. All right, so theater artist resume, again, the performance experience is going to be your bread and butter. Experience is generally in this order: theater credits, film credits, television credits, but variable dependent on your impressive resume and your purpose. And it can be subdivided further as needed to cover what you've done. So left column, you'll usually have it in 3 columns. That's pretty standard. We already saw that in the musician resume example, but the left column will be the name of the play or movie. Typically, you can also put the role there in the left column, and then the role you played, and then the name and location of the theater and or the director's name. So like if it's a film or something, you would put the director's name there. So here's what this might look like. Again, usually 1 page, and then you'd have your headshot on the back. Special skills, you can see there down at the end for a great example. And again, I have a lot of examples listed in the handout that you can check out. Film, television, theater. Again, this is a different order than I said, right? Because he's playing to his strengths, and maybe he's going out for a film role. So he puts that first. All right, and then we'll quickly go over writers, and then we'll move on. The educator and administrator sections are pretty, like, you know, you can get it from looking at the categories. It's pretty similar to a straight up artist CV, but you're adding some additional categories to cover your work experience in those realms. So let's just cover writers, and then we'll skip to the end. Publications is your bread and butter. You're going to include publications that are through a formal publishing company first, and then you can include anything you've self-published next. You do want to include your self-published works with a synopsis and any sort of sales figures that you have. You can also include positive ratings that you have from like Amazon or Goodreads, or any quotes that you've gotten from other authors or agents. You can include that there as well. People want to see the full scope of what you've done, especially on your CV, even if it's self-published. So here is a real writer CV from a ARP member shared with permission here, but you can see the publications are divided up into fiction and nonfiction, and then also including works in progress, which is great. And then here, professional affiliations, because this is a longer CV. General employment, sort of showing a wide variety of experiences that feed into their writing quite a bit. And then upcoming events there at the end, which I really like, especially if this is a publicly available CV, you would just have to update that quite a lot. All right, and then again, those are included in the handout, so we'll skip that.